A protective mother with her husband and newborn flees a flooded city for safety but soon encounters threats to her family's survival. On a rainy day in London, a blonde pregnant woman chats with her husband on the phone. Hearing the running water in the background, he assumes she's urinating. However, she corrects him, explaining that the sound comes from the tap filling the bathtub. Later in their conversation, she updates her spouse about the neighbors who departed in a camper van with all their belongings. He expresses concern and suggests they should consider getting their van soon, but the woman firmly refuses his proposal. After filling the tub, the pregnant woman submerges herself in the water and warmly greets her baby. Following this, she puts on a maternity dress and looks out the window, watching the heavy downpour. Later, she watches television and the power suddenly goes out. With nothing to do, she heads to the kitchen and eats a mango. Suddenly, she begins to feel contractions, causing her to stand up. As she endures the pain, she notices floodwater slowly entering her home. Realizing she's about to give birth, the woman tries to call her husband, but he doesn't pick up. Panicked, she dials for an ambulance, only to be informed by the operator that she needs to wait because the service is overwhelmed with requests. During unbearable pain, she moves toward the door. At that moment, floodwater breaches the window, coinciding with her water breaking. Fortunately, an ambulance arrives just in time, and she gives birth at the hospital. Soon, the woman's husband arrives and meets their newborn. He then inquires if his wife experienced pain during delivery, to which she replies with a no. Right after recovery, the new mother is discharged with her baby. Before leaving, the doctor advises her to urinate. When asked about their next destination, R assures the health professional that they'll leave the city. Unfortunately, they can't return home because their house is submerged in the flood. While the woman tries to urinate in the bathroom, the couple discusses their baby's name and mutually agrees to call him Zeeb. Later that evening, they exit the hospital facing the heavy rain as they go to their car. That evening while stuck in traffic, the new mother hears from the radio that extreme storms have submerged many parts of the country. As cars honk in chorus, she comforts Zeeb, who seems irritated by the noise. The following day, they manage to leave the city. They stop at an empty field where the woman feeds her baby. Afterward, they resume their journey, heading to R's parents' house. While on the road, the woman hears from the radio that many evacuees are heading to towns and villages on higher ground. A rule is put in place to handle the influx of people, allowing only current residents with valid IDs to re-enter the villages. Upon reaching a security checkpoint, the officer refuses to let them through. Despite R's explanation that they're headed to his parents' house, the inspector points out that he no longer resides there. The mother pleads with the officer, mentioning they have a 2-day-old son. Realizing their situation, the compassionate man allows them to pass through. Upon reaching their destination, the woman greets R's parents, G and N, who warmly welcome them. Once inside the house, the older man commends his son for successfully leaving the submerged city, commenting that they should have relocated years ago. In response, R reasons that he and his wife were preoccupied with making such a decision back then. G then invites her daughter-in-law to eat. During the meal, she mentions that she's been hoarding supplies for years, anticipating the disaster. Then, she playfully calls the couple townies for living in the flood-prone city. In response, R, an engineer, laughs, explaining that he and his wife can't do their jobs outside of London. The blonde mother interjects, confirming that she's still a hairstylist for celebrities on breakfast TV. A helper enters the house, and G hands her the boxes for delivery. The woman looks at the blonde mother and feels uneasy, prompting her to excuse herself and step outside. From the window, she witnesses her mother-in-law hugging their guest, and then interjects, revealing that their helper's son is missing. Later, the blonde mother takes her son outside and lays him on a blanket on the grass. She then finds R checking his dad's small house nearby, suggesting they can live there soon when it's repaired. When she asks what'll happen to their old house, R mentions that their street is flooded. He reassures her that they'll build a new home and start fresh. That evening while the couple's in bed, the woman comments that R's room looks different. Her spouse chuckles, remembering when they used the room for a romantic time together. Over the following days, the family perseveres through the challenging times, relying on hunting rabbits for food. Meanwhile, the woman harvests a vegetable, only to discover worms crawling out of them. 3 months later, the situation worsens, and people are still advised to seek refuge at their local shelter. Unfortunately, reports indicate that vital supplies fail to reach those needing them most. Despite the challenging news, the couple shares a romantic moment that evening, and the whole family remains resilient. Soon, the country's food crisis deepens, and aid agencies are reportedly running short on basic food and medicine. Armed police guard the food banks and implement a rationing system to protect limited resources. Eventually, the family faces shortages as their hoarded resources run low. To get supplies, Arndt and his parents head out to look for a food bank, leaving the mother alone in the house with the baby. That afternoon, the woman watches television while Zeeb sleeps. As the sun starts to go down, she begins to worry because her husband and in-laws haven't returned. In the evening, she tries to prepare a meal for her son. Suddenly, she notices someone in the backyard, causing her to feel terrified. A starving father and his son soon knock, and she lets them in, providing them with food. When they ask for more, She explains that she has a baby, prompting the strangers to leave. The frustrated mother struggles with her baby's constant cries the following day, leading her to take a break in the backyard with a cigar. Feeling awful, she returns home and apologizes to her son, reassuring him that they'll soon go home and that he won't remember everything that happened. That afternoon, the woman hears a car returning, only to find R&N without G. Her spouse then grieves the loss of his mother, now wanting to talk about what happened. She sympathizes with him, assuring him that she'll look out for him just as he always does for her. Later, the woman checks the car and retrieves the box of supplies, only to find 2 items inside. To her shock, she discovers a shovel with blood stains, realizing that something tragic had happened. Returning to the house, she tries to speak with N, but he appears too devastated to interact. She heads to the other house with her baby, frustrated with everything. Suddenly, it starts to rain. Returning to her in-laws' home, she encounters N in the yard, prompting her to sense that something's wrong. Worried, she invites him to come inside, offering to make him a cup of tea. However, her father-in-law insists on going for a walk. Quickly, the woman alerts her about N, expressing her desire to follow him. However, as she hands ZP to her husband, they hear a loud bang. Her spouse rushes off, only to discover that his dad has taken his own life. Left alone with her baby, the woman reflects on her life before the flood, reminiscing about when she was still pregnant and happily gardening with her husband in their house. Later, in the morning, R returns and tells his wife they must leave the house since there's no food anyway. The woman suggests joining a shelter. Initially, the husband refuses because of the large crowds. Eventually, he agrees and drives them there. However, upon arriving at the shelter, they witness the starving people being arrogant, demanding supplies from an officer. Inside the car, the woman comforts her traumatized spouse, suggesting that perhaps the presence of their baby will make the people calmer around them. However, R explains that the hungry people trampled on his mother's neck. The woman argues that starving people can still care for others around them, but the man dismisses it, pointing out everyone's inherent selfishness. Because of this, the protective woman volunteers to get out of the car. She ends up pushing through the crowd to receive food, injuring herself in the process. The following day, the woman starts a discussion with R, who believes that his wife and son should stay in the shelter. However, she interjects, asserting that they should go as a family. Hearing this, the man agrees, driving his family to the area. However, they learn that only one parent and child will be allowed inside the shelter. Despite his wife's initial hesitation, R convinces her to go inside with their son, assuring her they'll never go hungry. He admits he can't protect them and promises to return for them once conditions improve, ultimately leading his wife to agree with a difficult decision. Entering the shelter, a volunteer tells the woman about breakfast and lights out at 9. The blonde mother is brought to a large sleeping area, which she will share with strangers. That night, trying to comfort her baby, she aims to be quiet, not to disturb others. The following day, she witnesses a muscular man fighting another, accusing him of stealing his pillow. Everyone sees their arrogant behavior, and the woman worries about the place's safety. In the cafeteria, the blonde woman meets the bubbly O, who has a 5-month-old daughter. They soon start to form a friendship. The dark-haired lady soon shares that the baby's father bailed when he knew that she was pregnant. The woman then thanks her new friend and smokes a cigar. Afterward, she gazes at the area beyond the shelter and suddenly shakes the fence out of frustration. Promptly, she hallucinates, seeing R in the field and consuming a drink. While the others are sleeping that evening, Zeeb cries, prompting the blonde mother to calm him down. O assists her in easing the infant by placing him in the baby carriage and pushing it. Holding her friend's daughter, the blonde woman smiles, admiring O's caregiving skills. The next day, they continue to bond, laying their children on a blanket and entertaining them. Later in the cafeteria, the dark-haired woman shares about a commune on an island filled with wealthy people. She mentions that her friend is one of its founding members. However, as the woman listens, she becomes distracted when she sees her husband standing across from her. Suddenly, she snaps back to reality, and O invites her to look for the commune. The following day, the shelter is raided by mass thieves armed with weapons, compelling the residents to flee. As they escape, the blonde mom follows her friend who finds some strangers willing to give them a lift. However, the dark-haired woman asks the driver to slow down during the ride because it scares the babies. When he doesn't comply, she requests him to pull over so they can leave instead. Dropped off in an unfamiliar area, the women feel hungry and search for supplies but find none. As they continue walking, they come across a man named AB staying in an abandoned house. He invites them in because he has food to offer. As they eat, the kind stranger shares that he's traveling alone. Upon hearing this, O mentions they're headed to the commune near the coast. AB reveals that there are communes all over the island and advises them to head to the northern pier because that's where he found a boat. He shares that he's already been to a commune but left because the members wanted to forget about the disaster, which he couldn't bring himself to do. Nevertheless, he thinks that the place is excellent for the women who are raising their children. That night, the 3 survivors bond over drinks and dancing. Later, AB shares with a woman that he blames himself for losing his family because he believed they'd be safer near a city. He further reveals that they evacuated too late and he lost his wife and children when they were crossing the bridge. Because of this haunting memory, he feels compelled to return to the city. Before ending their conversation, the two exchanged expressions of gratitude for each other's company and a moment of relief during a devastating time. After the man leaves her, the blonde mom looks at the starry sky, slightly hopeful. AB leaves his new friends to return to the city the following day. After watching the stranger depart, the woman suddenly recalls seeing her husband at the bar where they first met. In the afternoon, the mothers resume their journey to the northern pier. Along the way, they sing as loud as possible since they're the only ones in the area. They arrive at the northern pier the following morning, but O feels disappointed because there's no boat to meet them. Despite this, she tries to remain hopeful, assuring her friend that they'll be rescued. As time passes, O starts to feel bad and hopeless, but she still tries to believe that someone will rescue them. Following this, they all fall asleep. Later, the blonde woman wakes up and heads to the sea, where she witnesses a boat arriving. She calls his attention by waving her arms and shouting and then awakens her friend to deliver the good news. An older lady, F, brings them to the island where the commune is. Upon arriving, the woman gazes towards the shore, where she once again sees her husband prompting her to recall the moment they first met in the bar and he invited her for dinner. Suddenly, the woman snaps back to reality and warmly greets the people at the commune. While eating with them, the radio announces that the worst of the extreme storms has finally passed. London's now being rebuilt, and citizens can return home to the city. Hearing the news, F requests the radio to be turned off, which the blonde woman finds strange. Later in the bedroom, she shares her story with O, recalling the time she had a breakdown when her parents passed away. After that, she became terrified of the thought of reaching the end of her life. She reveals that during her grief, she also met her husband who was so kind to her. She admits they didn't have much time to get to know each other well because she wanted to have a baby. However, she reflects that she might have wanted a child to eliminate her fear of perishing. The idea was to have something of her own that she would willingly sacrifice herself for. O then responds, stating that she doesn't think anyone has a baby for altruistic reasons. However, the blonde mom points out that even after she gave birth, her fear didn't disappear. Following this, O notices an eyelash on her friend's face. She takes it and asks the woman to make a wish before she blows it away. Later, the blonde mother finds herself thinking about her once again. On their first night of having dinner together, the man explained that he was sent to the place by his company. The woman then shared about herself, expressing her enjoyment of living in London. She described herself as someone who loved staying indoors and enjoyed ordering food cooked by others because she couldn't do it herself. R then joked that they were doomed and she agreed. Seeing the brooding woman, F approaches her and tries to comfort her, stating that some people find it harder to cope. However, she emphasizes that dwelling on the past doesn't work because what she misses no longer exists. In response, the blonde woman explains she's just having a moment. As F leaves to respect her request for space, she realizes that the commune leader wants to erase the memory of the disastrous flood and its effects. Later, while everyone's eating, the blonde woman heads to the shore. She removes her clothes and swims in the sea. As she dives deeper, she sees the furniture from her old house submerged in the flood. As she swims further, memories of R and Zeeb enter her mind. In a moment of liberation, she shouts out loud, realizing she doesn't want to forget everything. Following this, she tells F and O that she intends to return to the city with her baby. The commune leader worries about her plan, questioning the baby's survival, but the woman insists that her child needs her because she's his food source. In tears, the blonde woman admits that the commune is not for her, describing it as a place that harbors rejection. F clarifies that it's not what her commune does, but the woman asserts that she wants to prove to her son that she made an effort instead of pretending that nothing happened. When she decides to go home, O wants to stop her. However, F respects her decision and offers to bring her back to the northern pier. Later that day, the blonde woman surprises her lonely friend, who confesses she dislikes goodbyes. O fears for her safety during the journey, but the blonde mom laughs and jokes that anything terrible could happen to either of them. Tearfully, they say goodbye and express their appreciation for each other. Leaving the commune, the mother carries Zeeb and sets off on foot. Along the way, she finds a deceased rabbit on the road, which she cooks for herself and her son. Later, a bird appears, and she tries to share her food, but it flies away. Resuming her journey, she encounters a stranger with a vehicle on the road. She asks for help, and if she can come along, but the woman refuses. Shortly after, the lady's husband arrives, but his wife stops him from assisting the mother and son. Sensing the tension between the couple, the blonde woman promises to leave, but she walks slowly and immediately gets herself and her baby inside the car, driving off and leaving the owners behind. While on the road, she jokingly tells her son not to tell anyone what she did. Soon, they reach the border, where she lines up as a cleaning volunteer to board the coach heading back to London. Arriving in the city, she sees a wall filled with posters of missing people, including hers. After seeing the flood's aftermath, she plays peekaboo with Zeeb at the shelter. While hiding in her shirt, she asks him where she is, then reveals herself to make him laugh. But when she hides again and asks the question, she realizes the gravity of it and suddenly gets emotional, admitting to Zeeb that she's lost. Leaving the shelter, the mother carries her baby and walks through the town, witnessing the lingering effects of the flood. Eventually, she arrives at their street and finds their old home. Upon entering, she sees the mess caused by the flood. In the bedroom, her son's crib and the bed where she and her husband used to lie are still there. Following this, she moves to the kitchen and cleans the table. Suddenly, the woman hears the door open, and someone greets her with a hello. Recognizing the familiar voice, she tries to hold back tears. Slowly turning around, she sees her alive and safe and warmly greets him back. The couple then reunites, and Zeeb suddenly stands up to take his first steps. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.